Today, we're diving into a story that's become the stuff of legend. We're talking about a crime so bold, so perfectly planned, it was literally called the heist of the century. This is the anatomy of the Great Train Robbery.
So, imagine this. It's the middle of the night, just after 3 a.m. The Royal Mail train is barreling through the dark English countryside. The driver, a guy named Jack Mills, sees something odd. A red signal up ahead at Sears Crossing. Now that's weird. That light was pretty much always green. He does what he has to do and hits the brakes, bringing this huge, powerful train to a stop in the pitch-black silence.
Now, what Jack Mills couldn't possibly have known was that just a few carriages behind him was a pile of cash so huge, its value today would be an absolutely staggering £67 million. The stakes on this train were just immense.
And that gets us to the real question here, doesn't it? This wasn't some clumsy smash and grab. It was a masterpiece of criminal engineering. So how on earth did they do it? How did a group of guys stop a moving train, get what they wanted, and just melt into the night with a fortune?
All right, let's start with the heist itself. This is how it all went down.
The whole thing was executed with almost military precision. At 3 a.m. sharp, one of the gang members just covers the green signal light with a glove and uses a battery to power up the red one. Simple, but effective. The train stops, the co-driver hops out to use the emergency phone, only to find the line is dead. That's the first real sign that something is very, very wrong. And just moments later, the gang swarms the engine. When the driver, Jack Mills, put up a fight, he was brutally hit over the head with an iron bar.
Okay, so an ambush this precise doesn't just happen by chance, right? The gang knew everything, the route, the schedule, and exactly what was on that train. To figure out how, we've got to rewind a bit. This wasn't just a robbery, it was an inside job.
The gang's entire plan revolved around one single target, the high-value packages carriage, or the HVP. You should basically think of this thing as a bank vault on wheels. It was how the Royal Mail moved enormous sums of money across the country.
The mastermind behind all this was a very charismatic career criminal named Bruce Reynolds. He knew his own crew were pros, but they'd never hit a train before. So he did something smart. He joined forces with another gang, the South Coast Raiders, who had the exact experience they needed. All in all, this team was made up of over 15 different criminals.
But even with this criminal all-star team, the plan would have been totally impossible without one key player. A mysterious informant, someone deep on the inside of the Royal Mail. To this day, nobody knows who he was. But he gave them two pieces of intel that turned this whole risky idea into a true once-in-a-lifetime score.
The informant's first tip? It was an absolute game changer. He told them that because of a recent bank holiday weekend, the train wasn't carrying its normal load of about 300,000 pounds. No, it was carrying 10 times that amount, nearly 3 million pounds.
And the second tip, well, this was the real clincher. Normally, these HVP carriages had all sorts of fancy alarms, but the informant revealed that on this specific night, the main secure carriage was actually out of service. They were using a backup coach instead, one that had no alarm system whatsoever. I mean, it was the perfect storm.
So back to the night of the heist. The gang has the train, they have the money, they have a getaway plan, everything is going perfectly. But then, right in the middle of all the chaos, a single unscripted mistake is made. It's a 30-minute mistake that's about to bring their whole world crashing down.
At the ambush spot, the gang unhooks the engine and the first two carriages, which of course includes the HVP coach. Then they force the injured Jack Mills to drive them all about a kilometer down the tracks to a place called Bridego Bridge. That's where their getaway truck was hidden. Once there, they stormed the carriage, tied up the staff, and formed a human chain, passing down 2.5 tons of cash, bag by heavy bag. They worked with just ruthless efficiency. The plan was to be in and out in just 15 minutes, and in that time they loaded 120 of the 128 mailbags full of money. I mean, they were in such a hurry they actually left 8 bags and a small fortune behind on the train.
And then it happened. The fatal error. As the gang was leaving, one of them turned to the postal workers they'd tied up and made this threat. It was totally off the cuff, just meant to buy them a little more time. Instead, it gave the police the single biggest clue of the entire case.
So now we get to the manhunt. And that one little threat completely changed everything. It led police to a piece of evidence so ordinary, so mundane,
It's almost hard to believe. You see, the police immediately got what that 30-minute warning meant. It told them that the gang's hideout had to be within a roughly 50-kilometer radius of the robbery. Boom, the search area instantly shrank. And the gang, who were listening to police radios at their farmhouse hideout, heard this. And you can just imagine the panic setting in.
Their original plan was to lay low for a few days, but that was out the window. They had to speed everything up. So they scrambled, quickly dividing up the cash, wiping down every single surface in the farmhouse for fingerprints, and they even hired a local guy to burn the whole place to the ground after they left, just to destroy any last shred of evidence.
But here's where they made another huge mistake. The guy they paid to be their arsonist? Yeah, he just took the money and ran, leaving Leatherslade Farmhouse standing there completely intact, just waiting for the police to find it. And this brings us to the final, fatal, and frankly, kind of incredible irony. The police find the farmhouse and start searching. And yeah, the gang did a pretty good job wiping things down. But they missed something. To pass the time while hiding out, they'd played a game of Monopoly, using the actual stolen cash. Their fingerprints were all over the game board, and that was the breakthrough the police needed.
So, the Monopoly board led directly to the arrest of most of the gang members. But the story doesn't end there. The legacy of this one robbery would haunt pretty much everyone involved for the rest of their lives.
The sentences that were handed down were incredibly severe. This crime was seen as an attack on the British state itself, and the judge decided to make an example of them. Most of the captured robbers were sentenced to 30 years in prison.
And while the robbers became these sort of infamous folk heroes in some circles, it is so important to remember the real human cost. The train driver, Jack Mills, he suffered from terrible trauma after being attacked. He never drove a train again, and he died just 7 years later. His family always said that his death was a direct result of the robbery.
In the end, most of the gang was got, but not all of them. 2 men just vanished without a trace. And the biggest secret of all, the identity of that Royal Mail insider who made the whole thing possible, was never revealed. He was the ghost in the machine, the man who knew everything, and we still have no idea who he was.